My name is Derek Malone, and on the morning of February 17th, 2016, I died. I was gone for 6 minutes. No heartbeat, no breathing, flatlined. That's what the paramedics told me later. But what happened during those 6 minutes wasn't just some blur of unconsciousness or a dream. It wasn't darkness or silence. It was something deeper, something more real than anything I'd ever felt while alive. And when I came back, I wasn't the same man who left. I'm telling you this story not because I want attention or because I think it's some fairy tale. I'm sharing it because I believe God allowed me to see something, to experience something that I was meant to speak about. I believe someone watching this right now is supposed to hear it, and I don't take that lightly. This is the story of what happened to me the day I died, and what Jesus showed me about the soul, eternity, and how long we linger on earth after we pass. That morning started like any other, and honestly, I think that's part of what made it all the more shocking. I live in Lansing, Michigan, and at the time I was working as a supervisor at a mid-sized auto parts distribution center on the east side of town. It was a Wednesday, cold, gray skies, a little frost on the ground. I had been running late that morning because my youngest son, Caleb, had forgotten his lunchbox, and I had to double back home to drop it off at his school. My wife, Tricia, was already at her job, and I remember feeling a little frustrated as I sped through traffic to make up for lost time. But once I pulled into that gravel parking lot and stepped inside the warehouse, it was back to business as usual. I clocked in, grabbed a stale cup of coffee from the break room, and started my morning checks, just like every other day. I wasn't thinking about death that day. I wasn't thinking about my soul, or eternity, or whether I was ready to meet God. If you had asked me back then, I would have told you I believed in God. Of course I did. I've been raised in a Southern Baptist home, went to church as a kid, and I had a Bible somewhere in my house. But Jesus? Salvation? Eternal consequences? I kept all that stuff at arm's length. I had bills to pay, a family to take care of, and a job that demanded more than it should have. Like most people, I figured I'd deal with the spiritual side of life later. Later, when I was older. Later, when things settled down. Later, when it mattered more. I didn't realize how close I was to running out of later. It happened just past 9:15 a.m. I was standing near the back loading area, talking to one of my coworkers, Keith Morales, about a shipment that had come in mislabeled. We were mid-sentence. I remember I had just said the words, "That's not even supposed to be here until Friday," when everything went strange. It wasn't like pain or pressure. There was no tightness in my chest, no dizziness, no warning. It was more like someone flipped a switch inside me. The warehouse lights dimmed in an instant, not around me, but inside me. I didn't feel my legs give out. I didn't feel the floor hit me. I just went out. And then the next moment, I was looking down, literally looking down at myself. I was hovering. That's the only way I can describe it. It wasn't like a dream where things feel fuzzy or jumbled. It was clear, sharper than real life, if that makes sense. I was above the scene, about 8 or 9 feet in the air, and I was watching everything unfold in real time. I saw Keith kneeling next to my body, his hands shaking as he fumbled with his phone. His face was pale, almost gray, and I remember thinking he looked more scared than I'd ever seen him. I saw 2 other guys, Marcus and Tony, run over. One of them yelled my name, Derek, Derek, but it sounded distant, like a memory echoing across a canyon. The odd thing was, I didn't feel scared. I wasn't panicking or confused. I felt a strange peace, like something inside me was finally allowed to breathe for the first time in years. And I realized something in that moment, something that still shakes me even now. I wasn't in my body anymore, but I was still me. My thoughts were still my own, but more clear. It was like I'd been driving a car with a dirty windshield all my life, and suddenly the glass had been wiped clean. I could see everything, details I wouldn't have noticed if I were conscious. The specks of dust in the fluorescent lights above me. The way Keith's shirt was untucked. Even the glint of my wedding band on my left hand, now motionless on the cold concrete floor. Time didn't feel linear. I couldn't tell if seconds were passing or hours. I just knew I was floating, aware, and very much alive, just not in the way I'd always thought life worked. There was no pain, no panic, just a quiet knowing I had left my body. I had died, and something was waiting for me on the other side. Then it happened. The warehouse, the people, even the physical world around me. It began to fade, like a photograph losing its color. It wasn't gone, not completely, but it didn't matter anymore. I could still see in a sense, but it became less important, like a background image behind a window, slowly opening. And then came the pull. That's the best word I can use. A force, not harsh, but commanding, started drawing me upward like gravity in reverse. I wasn't flying. I wasn't choosing to move. I was being lifted. I didn't resist it. I didn't want to. Everything in me wanted to go. It felt natural, right? Like this is what we were always meant to do. Leave behind the shell and return to something greater, something higher. As I rose, the atmosphere around me changed. I no longer felt the cold warehouse air or the hard echo of concrete beneath my shoes. Instead, I was surrounded by something warm, not in temperature, but in essence. It was like stepping into the presence of something holy, something perfect, and yet not overwhelming. I felt seen, fully seen, not just for what I'd done or hadn't done, but for who I was at my core. And I felt loved. That part is hard to put into words. It wasn't the kind of love we throw around here on Earth. It wasn't conditional. It wasn't based on what I'd accomplished or how good I'd been. It was pure, undiluted, eternal. And I knew, deep in the depths of whatever part of me was still Derek Malone, that I was approaching something or someone beyond anything I could imagine. The light came next, but calling it light doesn't do it justice. It wasn't just brightness, it was being. This light wasn't coming from a source like the sun or a bulb. It was everywhere and everything. It was alive. It had a presence. It moved through me, but also around me, like it knew me, like it had always known me. I didn't see walls or a tunnel like you hear about in some stories. It was more like I had passed through some kind of invisible barrier into another realm, and this light was waiting there, not to blind me or to show off, but to welcome me. I wasn't floating anymore. I was being held in this warm, living light, and the longer I stayed in it, the more I felt all the noise, fear, and heaviness I'd carried my whole life begin to fall away. Regret, guilt, anxiety, all of it started peeling off me like layers of old skin. And then I became aware of a presence. Not a person at first, not in a physical sense, but I knew, somehow, without being told, that Jesus was there. The Jesus, not the version I grew up hearing about in Sunday school with long hair and sandals, not the one painted on church walls or printed in red-letter Bibles. This wasn't an idea. He was real, so real that everything else I'd ever experienced in life felt like shadows compared to him. His presence didn't walk up to me, it surrounded me. And I knew instantly that he had always known me from the moment I was formed in my mother's womb. He knew every lie I'd ever told, every hidden shame, every failure. He knew about the things I did that I never told anyone. And yet, he wasn't angry. He wasn't there to condemn me. He was there because he wanted me. When he finally spoke, or maybe it was more like his presence speaking straight into my soul, it wasn't in English or any human language. It was like every truth I'd ever needed was suddenly planted inside of me all at once. Not shouted, not even said, known. I don't know how else to describe it. His voice was like thunder made of peace. He didn't ask me who I was. He didn't need to. He already knew, but he did something I never expected. He showed me my life, not as a punishment, not to shame me, but like a mirror being held up to my soul. I saw moments I'd forgotten, things I'd done to people, words I said in anger, times I turned away when someone needed me, missed chances to love, to forgive, to be the kind of man I was meant to be. And I saw the moments I almost reached for him but didn't. And then came the question, not asked in words, but it pierced me all the same. Do you know me? Not did you go to church? Not did you believe in God? But do you know me? And in that moment, I realized I didn't. I knew about him. I respected him. I believed he existed. But I had never surrendered to him. I had never made him Lord of my life. I had never said, here I am, broken and messed up, take all of me. And standing there in the presence of Jesus, that truth hit harder than any punishment could have. It wasn't that he was rejecting me. He wasn't. It was that I had lived my whole life keeping him at a distance. And now here I was face to face with the one I had been avoiding without even realizing it. I don't know how long I stood there in that presence, if you can even call it standing. Time didn't move the same way it does on Earth. Seconds didn't tick by. There's no sun, no clock, no rhythm that could be measured. It was more like everything was happening all at once and also unfolding slowly, like God himself was controlling the tempo. And I was just there, fully present, fully exposed, and yet completely covered in a love that no human could ever earn. And even though I had just come face to face with the reality that I didn't truly know him, I didn't feel hate or distance coming from Jesus. I felt sorrow, yes, but not as sorrow mine. I was grieving the way I'd lived, not because I'd been caught, but because for the first time ever, I realized what I had missed. I realized how empty my life had been, chasing things that didn't matter, clinging to pride, keeping my heart locked up. Then something happened that I didn't expect. Jesus didn't send me anywhere. He didn't throw lightning or pass judgment like I feared. Instead, he began to show me things. It was like I was taken on a journey, a tour, almost of what happens to a soul after death. Not just mine, all of us. He was letting me see with eternal eyes. The first thing he showed me was how, after death, many souls don't immediately move on to heaven or hell like we tend to think. They linger. They stay near the earth. Not forever, but for a time. Some out of confusion, some out of fear, some because they have unfinished business they cling to, others because they simply do not know where to go. And the scariest part? Many don't even realize they've died. Jesus showed me how the soul remains conscious after death, fully aware, more aware than it ever was in the body. And during that time, however long that time is for each person, the soul is processing everything. Choices, regrets, missed chances to forgive, times when they felt that tug in their spirit to turn to God and ignored it. And in that space between physical death and eternal destination, a kind of spiritual clarity sets in. There's no more pride to hide behind, no more distractions. The truth becomes undeniable, and for some, that truth is the most painful thing they've ever faced. Not because God is cruel, but because they realized too late that they were the ones who walked away from him. It broke my heart to see it, even from a distance. I could feel the ache in those souls. I could hear it, not with ears, but deep within. That ache of, I had the chance and I didn't take it. He also showed me something else, something I still have a hard time talking about. I saw a place. It wasn't hell, at least not the final judgment hell. Jesus called a place of waiting. In the Bible, it's often referred to as Hades or Sheol, and it's not what most people picture when they think of torment. It wasn't fire and demons with pitchforks. It was worse in some ways. It was a place of knowing, souls that were awake, alert, and filled with a sorrow that ran deeper than any scream. They were being tortured with whips or flames. They were being tormented by truth, by the weight of regret, by the full understanding that they had the invitation to choose life, to choose Jesus, and they turned it down. Not because they were evil monsters, but because they were distracted, too busy, too proud, too sure they had more time. And now, all they had was time, too late. I could feel them. I don't mean that in a poetic or symbolic way. I mean, I could actually feel what those souls were feeling. Jesus didn't just let me see their sorrow. He let me carry it for a moment. It was the heaviest, most crushing weight I've ever known, and it wasn't just sadness. It was despair mixed with clarity. These souls weren't crying out to be freed from some punishment. They were crying out because they finally understood. They understood how real Jesus was, how real eternity was, how every choice they made on earth had meaning. They weren't angry at God. They weren't blaming anyone. They were simply broken by the realization that they had wasted their chance to be with Him. And that awareness, that sharp, searing awareness, is what created the torment. A kind of spiritual anguish that doesn't have a human comparison. And yet, even in that place, even in that sorrow, Jesus never looked away. That was the part that shattered me. He showed me that He still loves those souls. His love didn't stop when their bodies did. He loved them at their worst. And He loves them even as they wait, consumed with regret. But justice, true, holy justice, doesn't ignore choice. Jesus never forces Himself on anyone. He doesn't barge in. He invites. He knocks. But if someone refuses to open the door over and over for an entire lifetime, eventually that door closes. And not because He wants it to, but because that's what they chose. Watching this unfold, even as just a witness, was the most heartbreaking thing I've ever experienced. It made me see salvation not as a religion or a duty, but as a rescue. And we either take it or we don't. After that, Jesus took me somewhere else, somewhere bright, peaceful beyond words. And I felt the contrast. I was allowed to feel the difference between the soul that had accepted Him and the soul that had rejected Him. The soul that knew Him didn't enter that place with fear or hesitation. It was drawn in by joy, by the warmth of home. There were no questions, no anxiety, just fulfillment. Not like earthly pleasure, but like something far deeper. Purpose completed, love fulfilled, wholeness restored. I wasn't allowed to stay in that place, but I was given a glimpse, and even that glimpse undid me. It was more beautiful than anything I've ever known. The colors were alive, the air sang with peace, and there was a joy, like reunion, like celebration, that words can't touch. It was clear to me in that moment. This is what we were made for. Then came the moment I never saw coming. Jesus turned to me, not with a voice, but with presence, and let me know it wasn't my time. I didn't want to leave. I can say that honestly. Nothing in me wanted to go back to my body, my job, my bills, my stress. I had touched eternity. I had stood in truth. Why would I want to return to a broken world after that? But then Jesus showed me my wife, Trisha, and my kids, Caleb and Lauren. He showed me my future, brief flashes of things that hadn't happened yet, conversations I hadn't had, people I hadn't met, moments where I would get to speak the truth of what I saw to someone who desperately needed it. And then He said something I'll never forget, not in words, but again, in that way He speaks soul to soul. You have to tell them. Go back. Tell them everything. And then it was like being pulled backward through a tunnel I hadn't realized I'd entered. I didn't feel pain, not at first. What I felt was compression, like being squeezed through something too small for my spirit. The light faded. The music of peace, the living hum I hadn't even noticed until it stopped, went silent. And then came the thud, the violent slamming back into flesh like my soul had been dropped into a vessel too tight, too broken. My eyes snapped open, blinding white lights overhead. shouting, beeping, cold air against my skin. The weight of gravity returned. I could feel my chest rising and falling in short, uneven bursts, and I realized I was alive. Really, physically alive. And for a moment, I regretted it. Not because I wanted to die, but because I had just been in the presence of Jesus, and now I was here, back in a world that didn't know what it was missing. The first voice I heard was a paramedic, Officer Dana Wells. I later found out, say my name over and over. Derek? Derek Malone. Can you hear me? I blinked, but couldn't speak right away. My throat felt like sandpaper. My chest burned, probably from CPR. I couldn't move my hands, but I was awake, confused, overwhelmed, and utterly changed. I saw Keith standing in the corner of the warehouse, his face streaked with tears, like he'd just watched something die in front of him. Technically, he had. They told me later that my heart stopped for nearly 6 minutes. No pulse, no breath, just gone. And then, just like that, I was back. The team said it was a miracle. The doctors called it a spontaneous return. But I knew better. I knew what had really happened. It wasn't until days later, lying in a hospital bed with tubes in my arms and machines monitoring every beat of my heart, that I began to process everything. The memories didn't come as a flashback. They came as truth, unfolding slowly, layered like the pages of a sacred book only I had been allowed to read. I tried to tell a nurse at first. She smiled politely, nodding as if I were confused for medication. My wife listened carefully when I told her, and to her credit, she didn't brush me off. She just sat there, holding my hand, as I cried harder than I ever had before. I wasn't crying from fear. I was crying from clarity. I had seen what most people never get to see until it's too late. I had stood before Jesus, and he had given me a mission to come back and tell you, to tell everyone. And that's why I'm here, speaking to this camera, telling you this story. Because it's not just a story. It's not a hallucination or a psychological event from oxygen loss. What happened to me was real. More real than this chair I'm sitting in. More real than the phone in your hand or the floor under your feet. And it wasn't just meant for me. It was meant for you too. Because one day you'll leave this body. One day you'll stand where I stood. And when that moment comes, it won't matter how much money you had, or how many followers, or how successful your career was. The only thing that will matter is whether you knew Jesus, really knew him. Not just his name, not just his stories, but whether your heart had surrendered to him while you were still alive. Since that day, nothing in my life has looked the same. It's like the lens I used to see the world through is shattered and replaced with something clearer, something heavier in meaning. I don't look at people the same way anymore. Not strangers in the store, not the guy cutting me off in traffic, not even my own kids. I look at them and I wonder, do they know? Do they understand how fragile all this is? Do they feel how close we are to the edge at every moment? Because I do now. Every breath I take feels borrowed. Every morning I wake up feels like a second chance. Not just to live, but to speak. To tell someone else the truth before their time runs out. Because the truth is, most of us are walking around completely unaware of how thin the veil is between this world and the next. And when it tears, there's no turning back. There's something else I have to tell you. Something Jesus made clear to me during that experience, though it's hard to put into words. He showed me how we don't just leave the earth and vanish. The soul doesn't immediately disappear or get swallowed up into nothingness. Instead, it lingers. It hovers. There is a span of time after death. How long? I don't know, because time doesn't work the same there, but it's long enough. Long enough for the soul to understand. Long enough for it to grasp what just happened. Long enough for the truth to settle in. And in those moments, Jesus showed me the soul knows. It knows whether it belonged to him. It knows whether it's going home or whether it turned away. And the heaviness of that knowing is more powerful than anything we experience while alive. That in-between space, that waiting period, isn't something the Bible talks about in great length, but it's there hidden between verses hinted at in parables. The thief on the cross, the story of Lazarus and the rich man, even Jesus descending into the lower parts of the earth after his crucifixion. All of it points to a truth that the church doesn't always teach clearly, that there's a holding place, a spiritual zone where the soul pauses. For some, it's peaceful, a transition into glory, a breath before heaven opens up. But for others, it's torment, not because of fire or flames, but because of what they now know, because they see the truth they ignored, because they remember every moment they felt him pulling at their heart, and every moment they shrug it off like it was nothing. And once that moment passes, there's no going back. Jesus didn't show me everything, but what he did show me was enough to wreck the way I'd been living. He let me feel the weight of what it means to reject him, not from his side, but from the human side. The regret, the emptiness, the sudden knowing that you had a chance, and now it's gone. And I can't get that feeling out of my spirit. I don't want to, because it's that burden that drives me now. It's what keeps me awake some nights, praying for people I've never even met. It's what makes me speak up, even when it's awkward or uncomfortable. It's what makes me record this video and put it out into the world, not for likes or subscribers, but because I have to, because I promised him I would, and because, honestly, if I didn't tell you, I don't think I could live with myself. After I came back, I struggled to find the words to explain everything. How do you explain eternity to someone who's never tasted it? How do you describe the voice of Jesus when it didn't sound like a voice at all, but rather something that sang straight through your bones? I'd sit with my wife at the kitchen table late at night, try and tell her what I'd seen, what I'd felt, but I could see it in her eyes. She didn't fully understand. And I don't blame her. How could she? I barely understood it myself. I'd break down sometimes, not out of fear, but from the weight of it. The beauty, the sorrow, the sense that I had stepped beyond time and come back with a knowledge I could never fully put into human words. It was like I was carrying something sacred, something dangerous, something I had to handle with trembling hands and a burning heart. I started reading my Bible again, not out of obligation or guilt, but because I wanted to. For the first time in my life, it wasn't just words on a page, it was alive. It was breathing. I'd open it and feel like I was sitting in the same light that had surrounded me during those 6 minutes. I'd read verses I'd heard 1,000 times, and suddenly they were exploding with meaning. To be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. I had lived that. The wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life in Christ Jesus our Lord. I had seen both sides of that promise, the regret of rejecting him and the joy of being in his presence. It was all real. Every word, every warning, every invitation. And I couldn't believe I had wasted so much of my life treating it like background noise. What shook me the most wasn't what I had experienced personally, but what Jesus showed me about the world around me. I started seeing people differently. At work, at the grocery store, even on the freeway, I couldn't look at anyone without wondering, do they know him? I don't mean do they go to church? Or do they grow up religious? I mean, do they really know him? Do they know his voice? Do they feel his spirit moving in their lives? Or are they just passing time, drifting, thinking they've got years left when the truth is they might only have minutes? I know that sounds dramatic, but it's not. It's real. I had minutes. And if I hadn't been given a second chance, I'd have gone into eternity with nothing to stand on. No relationship, no surrender, just belief from a distance, which isn't enough. I know that now. And if you're watching this and feeling uncomfortable, I get it. Believe me, I do. I didn't want to hear this stuff either when I was alive and healthy and focused on my paycheck. I had responsibilities. I had plans. But none of that mattered in the moment my body hit the floor. I wasn't thinking about my mortgage. I wasn't thinking about my next promotion or what people thought of me. I was thinking about truth, about what I'd done with the years I'd been given, about whether I had actually lived for anything that would last beyond the grave. And that's the question I need to ask you, because one day, maybe soon, maybe years from now, you'll find yourself where I was, on the edge. And in that moment, all the noise will fall away, and the only thing left will be your soul and the one who made it. There's something else I need to share, something I haven't told many people, mostly because it's hard to talk about without breaking down. After I was shown the place of waiting, where souls linger in sorrow and regret, Jesus let me feel the heartbeat of the Father. I know that sounds strange, but that's the only way I can describe it. It was as if I was plugged directly into the love and grief of God Himself. I felt how deeply He longs for people to turn to Him. I felt the ache in His heart every time someone walks away, every time someone brushes off His voice. And it wrecked me. I always pictured God as distant, holy, untouchable. But in that moment, I realized He's not distant. He's pursuing us, desperately, relentlessly, lovingly, and we're the ones running. I saw faces while I was there. People I didn't recognize, but I knew instinctively they were real. Not just visions or symbols, real souls. A woman clutching her chest, crying out in silence. A young man staring into darkness, too proud to ask for help. An old man sitting alone in what looked like a bus stop, but everything around him was empty. And Jesus whispered something to me. Not in words, but in spirit. They had the chance. They felt me call them. But they waited. That word, waited, echoed inside me. Because it wasn't rejection in the way we think. It wasn't hatred of God. It was delay. It was distraction. It was postponing the decision until later, until after retirement, after the kids grew up, after the next job, after one more bad relationship. But later never came. Death did. When I came back, that single truth haunted me more than anything. So many people will die thinking they have more time. That's the great lie, isn't it? That we're guaranteed tomorrow. That we'll feel the Spirit tugging again later. That we'll have a dramatic conversion someday, like the thief on the cross, right before the end. But Jesus showed me that the most dangerous decision you can make is to wait. Because eternity doesn't wait. Death doesn't send a warning text. It shows up mid-conversation, mid-shift, mid-sentence. And once you're out of your body, the veil lifts, and all that truth you ignored becomes the only thing you can see. I don't say this to scare you. I say it because I love you enough to tell you what I saw, what I felt. And I'd be lying if I didn't tell you that not everyone makes it home. Now, I live every day with a kind of urgency I didn't have before. It's not anxiety, and it's not panic, it's purpose. I wake up with this fire inside me, this burden to speak while I still have breath. Because I don't know how long I've got left. None of us do. And if I can speak to even one soul, just one person out there who's sitting on the fence, who's been feeling that pull in their chest but keeps stuffing it down, I will speak. I will testify. I will shout from the rooftops if I have to. Jesus is real. Eternity is real. Heaven is real. And so is the pain of realizing too late that you turned away from the only one who could save you. Don't let that be your story. Please, don't wait like I did. Since the day I came back, I've had moments where I wished I could just go back to that place. Not because I want to escape life or because I'm unhappy, but because once you've tasted that kind of love, that kind of peace, nothing in this world quite compares. It's not that my life here is bad. I have my wife, my kids, a new sense of direction. But the ache never fully leaves. It's a holy kind of ache, like homesickness for a place my soul remembers. Every now and then, in the quiet moments, I feel it again. That presence, that warmth, That knowing. And it reminds me that this world is not my home. It never was. We're all just passing through. And the longer we cling to what's temporary, the more we forget what's eternal. I've also seen things differently in people. I notice when someone is spiritually numb. I recognize it now in their eyes. The glaze of someone who's just surviving, just going through the motions, unaware of the war being fought for their soul. I've seen people laugh at God, mock faith, roll their eyes at the idea of salvation. And I don't get angry anymore. I just hurt for them, because I was them. I wasn't mocking out loud, but I was indifferent in my heart. I thought believing in God was enough. I thought being a decent guy and staying out of trouble meant I was good with the big man upstairs. But I didn't know him. And that's the line. That's the difference between a soul that's welcomed into eternal life and a soul that lingers in regret. Relationship, not religion. Surrender, not surface-level belief. I don't think I'll ever fully be able to explain everything I saw. There were things in that space, things I believe I wasn't even allowed to remember after coming back. I think some truths are too deep, too sacred to carry while still in a broken, earthly body. But the parts one do remember, the parts one was allowed to bring back, are more than enough. They are enough to burn away my fear of death. Enough to make me let go of pride. Enough to make me live differently. I don't hold on to grudges anymore. I forgive quicker. I say I love you more. I pray with my whole heart. And I tell people, even if it makes them uncomfortable, that there's a Savior who sees them, who loves them, and who is waiting for them to finally say yes. One of the last things Jesus said to me before I came back, I'll never forget it, was this: tell them I'm still calling. Tell them I haven't stopped knocking. That message wrecked me, because how many times in my life had he knocked? How many times did I feel that pull in my chest during a sermon, or a moment alone in the car, or when tragedy struck and I felt something bigger calling me to slow down and look up? And how many times did I brush it off, telling myself I'd deal with it later? If you're watching this right now, and you felt that same pull, that's him. That's Jesus. He hasn't stopped knocking. He hasn't stopped calling your name. But he won't kick down the door. He's waiting, patiently, lovingly, but he won't wait forever. I need you to understand something, not just hear it, but really let it land in your heart. I wasn't some perfect person who had a golden ticket to heaven. I wasn't a pastor. I wasn't out doing mission work. I was a regular guy, clocking into work, carrying stress on my shoulders, barely praying, and treating God like a distant idea rather than a living, breathing Savior. I didn't have my life figured out. I had anger issues. I held on to bitterness. I said I believed in God, but I lived like I believed in myself more. And yet, he came for me. He showed up in my final breath, not to punish me, but to show me what I needed to see. He didn't bring me back because I deserved it. He brought me back because he's good, because he's merciful, because someone out there, maybe you, needed to hear this. There are people who have messaged me since I started sharing my story. They say things like, I want to believe, but I've done too much, or I've been away from God for too long. And I always tell them the same thing. If you still have breath in your lungs, you haven't gone too far. The very fact that you're here, watching this video, listening to these words, means that God is still reaching for you. That pull you feel, that little voice that keeps saying, what if this is real? That's him. That's the Spirit of God calling out to your soul. And it doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter how long you've been running. It doesn't matter how broken you feel. The invitation still stands. The cross still stands. His arms are still open. And the only thing he wants in return is you. I've had people tell me that my story gave them chills. Some say they cried. Some say they felt something shift in them while listening. And every time I hear that, I'm reminded of that moment in the light, when Jesus looked at me and didn't see a failed man, but a son. He didn't list my sins. He didn't replay my worst mistakes. He just loved me. Fully. Undeniably. And if he could do that for me, he can do that for anyone. I don't care how far you've fallen. I don't care how empty you feel. There's a Savior who knows your name, who's been walking beside you even when you didn't realize it, and who wants to bring you home. I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about relationship, a surrender, a moment where you stop fighting and simply say, "Yes, Lord, I need you." And so here I am, still waking up in this world, still paying bills, still raising my kids, but doing it all with a heart that beats differently. I live slower now. I listen more. I worship with tears in my eyes because I know what I was saved from. Not just the grave, not just physical death, but eternal separation, eternal silence, the hollow nothingness that waits for those who say not yet to Jesus one too many times. And I can't let that be you. I can't sit back quietly and let another soul walk blindly toward the cliff thinking they've got forever. Because you don't. None of us do. And if you're feeling that tug right now, don't wait. Please, don't tell yourself you'll deal with God eventually. Eventually might not come. Say yes to him now while you still can. I remember one night, a few months after my experience, I was lying awake in bed. Everyone else in the house was asleep. My wife, my kids, even the dog. But I couldn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling, tears silently rolling down the sides of my face, because I was replaying everything in my head. The light, the presence, the way Jesus looked at me, the souls I saw, lingering in sorrow, and the ones who were welcomed with joy. And I kept hearing those words, "Tell them I'm still calling." It played like a loop in my chest, echoing deeper each time. I knew I couldn't go back to living a normal life. I knew I couldn't just get up and go through the motions anymore. Once you've seen the eternal, you can't pretend this world is all there is. So I made a decision that night. I told God, use me, whatever breath I've left, whatever time you've given me back, use it. And I meant it. I didn't know how to preach. I didn't know how to lead Bible studies, but I knew how to tell the truth, my truth. And the more I started sharing, the more I realized there are people everywhere who are hungry for something real, tired of fake answers, tired of shallow church experiences, tired of being told they have to earn their way to heaven. What they want, what they need, is to encounter the God who sees them, who loves them, who died for them, and who still whispers their name even when they've stopped listening. That's the God I met in those 6 minutes. That's the Jesus I want you to meet right now. If you've watched this far, I want you to understand something. You didn't find this video by accident. I don't believe in coincidences anymore. Not after what I saw. Not after standing in the very presence of the one who made me. You're here because your soul is waking up. You're here because God is reaching for you. Maybe you've been running your whole life. Maybe you've been pretending everything's fine on the outside while crumbling on the inside. Or maybe you've just been numb, not angry at God, just distant, numb. I know that numbness well. I lived in it for years. But you don't have to stay there. There's more. There's life. There's freedom. And all you have to do is turn around. That's what repentance means. It means turning around and walking toward the one who's already running toward you. So I'll ask you the same question that Jesus asked me in that place between life and death. Do you know me? Not, do you go to church? Not, did you grow up religious? But do you know him? Have you surrendered? Have you laid down your pride and your plans and said, Jesus, I'm yours? Because that's what he's waiting for. Not perfection, not performance, just your heart. That's all he's ever wanted. And when you give him that, when you finally say yes, you don't just change your destination. You change your life. Right here, right now. This moment can be the beginning of something eternal, something real. And I'm begging you, don't let it pass by. I wish I could take this experience and hand it to you. I wish I could reach through the screen and let you feel what I felt in that place. That light, That peace, that overwhelming sense of being completely known and still completely loved. Because if you could feel even a second of it, you'd understand why I'll never stop talking about it. It wasn't just emotional. It wasn't some mental coping trick. It was truth. It was reality. A reality more solid, more alive than anything this world offers. And even now, years later, I still carry it with me. I carry the memory of what it felt like to be weightless, to be free from fear, and to see Jesus, not just hear about him, but see him. And every day that I wake up in this world, I carry the responsibility to make that encounter count. I started journaling shortly after I got home from the hospital. At first, it was just to get the images out of my head because they wouldn't stop coming. The faces I saw, the voices I didn't hear with ears but could still understand, the presence of Jesus, the sorrow, the joy, the endless stretch of eternity. All of it haunted me in the most beautiful and heartbreaking ways. Writing it down helped me hold on to it, but it also helped me realize that this story wasn't meant to be kept quiet. Every sentence I wrote felt like a message being carved into my soul. Tell them, tell them, tell them. Not to scare people, not to guilt them, but to wake them up before it's too late. Because that's what Jesus did for me. He woke me up. I've spoken to people who've had near-death experiences, and I'll be honest, not all of them are the same. Some describe peaceful encounters. Some describe tunnels or visions or out-of-body moments. But I can tell you with full confidence, what sets my experience apart wasn't the scenery. It was the person. Jesus was there, not as a symbol, not as an idea, but as himself, living, knowing, loving, real. And if he showed himself to me, someone who wasn't even living right, someone who was distant and distracted, he will show himself to you too. Maybe not in the way you expect. Maybe not through a vision or a supernatural moment, but through this story, through this video, through that quiet tug on your heart right now that you can't explain. That's him. That's Jesus. And he's closer than you think. I think about the 6 minutes I was gone every single day. It changed how I walk, how I talk, how I love my family, how I treat strangers. I hug longer. I pray louder. I worship with everything I've got because I've seen what's on the other side. I've seen what's at stake. I know what it means to waste a lifetime chasing shadows and ignoring the light. And I know what it means to be given a second chance. Not because I deserved it, but because grace is real, unbelievable, undeserved grace. And now I carry this fire, this mission, this call to speak, not with polished words or perfect delivery, but with raw honesty and eternal urgency. If I have to spend the rest of my life telling this story until my last breath, I will. Because someone needs to hear it. Maybe that someone is you. If you had told me before all of this that I'd be sitting in front of the camera, pouring my heart out about Jesus, about eternity, about the soul, I would have laughed. I was never the religious guy. I respected it, sure. I didn't mock God or pick fights with Christians, but I also didn't live like any of it mattered. I was focused on my job, my responsibilities, getting through the week, and maybe catching a break on the weekend. Church was something we did on holidays or when things went wrong. Like it was an emergency switch behind glass labeled break only when needed. But now I know better. Now I know that ignoring the spiritual part of your life doesn't make it go away. It just blinds you to how real, how urgent, and how precious it actually is. And the most terrifying part? You can go your whole life thinking you're good enough and still miss him. Still miss heaven. Still end up in that waiting place I saw, surrounded by other souls who also thought they had more time. That's what haunted me more than anything when I came back. The realization that most people won't reject Jesus by screaming no. They'll reject him by saying not yet. They'll say, I'm not ready, or I'm just figuring things out, or I believe in God. I just don't want to get too religious. And that hesitation, that fence sitting, that spiritual procrastination, is what costs people their eternity. I saw it. I felt it. And I'm telling you with everything in me, don't play with forever. I wish I could tell you that after my near-death experience, everything in my life became easy, that all the pain disappeared and every problem sorted itself out because I had this incredible spiritual encounter. But that's not what happened. Life is still life. I still have struggles, still have moments of weakness, still get overwhelmed, still make mistakes. But the difference is I'm not walking alone anymore. I don't fear death anymore. I don't live in spiritual confusion anymore. I walk with the one I met beyond the veil. I walk with Jesus. And even when life is hard, even when the weight is heavy, I have peace. Not just surface-level peace, but deep, soul-rooted peace that comes from knowing exactly where I'm going when this is all over. So let me ask you a question, not from a preacher, not from a religious man, but from someone who died and came back. Where do you stand with Jesus? I'm not asking if you go to church or know a few Bible verses. I'm asking, do you know him? Do you talk to him? Have you surrendered to him? Have you trusted him not just with your Sundays, but with your life? Because when your moment comes, and it will, none of the other stuff is going to matter. Not your career, not your popularity, not your bank account. Only one thing will matter. Did you say yes to Jesus while you still had time? And if your answer is no, or if you're not sure, then right now is the time. Not tomorrow, not next year, right now. If you're waiting for some perfect moment, for everything in your life to calm down before you give Jesus your heart, I need to tell you something hard. That moment may never come. Life doesn't slow down. It doesn't line up perfectly. And death doesn't wait for us to get it all together. The moment I dropped to the ground that morning, I wasn't thinking about eternity. I was thinking about inventory sheets and backlog shipments. 1 second I was alive, joking, talking, breathing, and the next I was outside my body, watching everything unfold like a scene I wasn't supposed to be in. I didn't expect it. I didn't feel it coming. I just slipped out. And that's how it happens for so many people. Quick, quiet, final. I was lucky, blessed beyond reason. But most don't get the chance I got. Most don't come back to warn anyone. Sometimes I ask myself why God let me come back. Why me of all people? Why not one of the souls I saw in sorrow? Why not someone more faithful, more qualified, more deserving? And the only answer I've found is this: because grace doesn't make sense. Grace isn't about who earned it. It's about who's willing to receive it. Jesus gave me a second chance, not because I was good, but because he is. He saw something in me he could use. A voice, a testimony, a story that might shake someone out of their spiritual sleep. And so now, I live with a burden and a gift. A burden to carry what I saw, a gift to share it. And if I keep it to myself, then what was the point of coming back at all? I've lost friends over this. Some people I used to be close with don't talk to me anymore. They think I've gone too far into religion. They say I'm obsessed, that I've changed too much. And you know what? They're right. I have changed. You don't look Jesus in the eyes and come back the same. You don't get a taste of eternity and go back to small talk and shallow living. I am obsessed, but not with church rules or religious superiority. I'm obsessed with saving souls, with warning people, with pulling back the curtain on this life and showing what's waiting behind it. Because if you saw what I saw, if you felt what I felt, you'd understand. You'd understand that we're not promised anything beyond this very breath. And you'd be doing exactly what I'm doing right now, begging you to say yes to him before it's too late. There was a moment, right before Jesus sent me back, when I looked into what felt like the heart of God himself. It wasn't an image, not something visual. It was a knowing, a deep, spiritual understanding that broke me open in the best way. I saw his pain for the lost, his ache for every soul still running, his mercy waiting like a river just behind a dam. ready to rush in the second someone whispers his name. I felt his patience, his longing, and most of all, his hope. God isn't just watching you. He's hoping for you, hoping you'll look up, hoping you'll come home. He's not waiting with a hammer. He's waiting with open arms. That's the truth. That's the gospel. And if you can't feel that right now, let me feel it for you until you do. There's something powerful that happens when you finally understand that eternity isn't far away. It's right next to us. It's not a distant event that happens when you're old, lying in a hospital bed surrounded by family. It can happen in the middle of a normal day, in a warehouse, at a red light, at the dinner table. I learned that the hard way. I learned that it takes one skipped heartbeat, one undiagnosed condition, one accident, and your soul is standing outside of time, face to face with the truth you either accepted or ignored. And when that moment comes, there are no second chances unless Jesus himself brings you back like he did for me. There are no arguments left to make, no excuses, just reality. The soul sees with perfect clarity, and in that clarity, there's either peace or overwhelming regret. I saw people who had been good by the world's standards. Honest people, family people, people who paid their bills and were kind to their neighbors. And yet, there they were, in that place of waiting, not because they were murderers or thieves or monsters, but because they didn't know him. They knew of him. They might have even said his name, but they never surrendered, never let him into their hearts. And now they were stuck in that awareness, haunted by the chances they had, the invitations they declined. And trust me, you don't want to feel what I felt watching them. That's the kind of ache that doesn't go away. It stays with you. It changes how you talk, how you pray, how you live. It makes you realize that the only thing that matters at the end is not what you believed, but who you belong to. People ask me all the time, what did Jesus look like? And I wish I could describe him in a way that would do him justice. But he wasn't defined by his features. He was defined by his presence. He didn't walk toward me in glowing robes. He didn't need to speak out loud. He was everywhere and everything at the same time. He was light and love and truth in its purest form. And when he looked at me, or looked through me, it felt like every lie I'd ever told, every sin I'd ever tried to hide, every time I'd said maybe later to him, it all came to the surface. But not to shame me, not to condemn, but to heal. He revealed to redeem. His gaze didn't just expose who I had been. It revealed who I was meant to be. And that's what broke me. That's what made me fall to my knees inside, spiritually, even without a body. That's what changed me forever. So if you're still wondering if this story is real, if you're questioning whether I actually died or just had a dream, let me ask you something. What if it is real? What if everything I'm telling you is true? What if you're watching this because Jesus is calling you through this very testimony? You don't need a dramatic near-death experience to respond to God. You just need a willing heart. That's it. That's all he's asking for. You don't have to clean yourself up first. You don't have to fix your whole life before you come to him. He just wants you, as you are, right now. Not when you're perfect, not when you've figured everything out. Now, because if there's one thing I learned more than anything in those 6 minutes, it's that now is all we've ever really got. I think about that every single day. How close I came to standing before God forever without truly knowing him. How easily I could have passed into eternity carrying nothing but good intentions and religious background noise. And the thing is, if I hadn't come back, I wouldn't be telling this story. I wouldn't be warning you. You'd never hear my voice. My kids would have grown up without their father. My wife would have buried a husband who died spiritually empty. And my soul? It would have remembered every moment I ignored the tug on my heart. Every moment I postponed surrender. And in that place I saw, the place of waiting, I would have sat with those same regrets that I felt in others. That almost haunts me more than anything else. How close I was to losing it all forever. But by the grace of God, only His grace, I was given a second chance. Not everyone gets that. In fact, most don't. That's why I take this so seriously. That's why I keep telling this story, even when people roll their eyes or say I've become too intense. Because I was given another breath, another day, another shot to live for the one who saved me. And I don't plan on wasting it. I'm not here to argue theology or debate doctrine. I'm here to tell you what I saw, what I lived, and what I now know deep in my bones, that Jesus is real. He is not an idea. He is not a myth. He is not one of many options. He is the way, the truth, the life, and no one comes to the Father except through Him. When I tell people that, some get offended, some get quiet, some get curious. But the truth is, I don't say it to be harsh. I say it because I care. Because if you only knew the weight of what I saw, if you knew how souls ache after they pass, how they long for one more moment on earth to say yes to Him, you'd be telling people too. You'd be shouting it from rooftops, in grocery stores, on social media, through tears in your voice and urgency in your spirit. This isn't about religion. This isn't about being better than anyone. This is about not going into eternity without the one who can carry you through it. Because you can't stand before a holy God in your own strength. You need Jesus. And thank God, He's already made the way. All you have to do is follow it. I know this is heavy. I know it's not easy to hear. But please don't let that make you turn away. Let it wake you up. Let it open your eyes. Because maybe that's why I came back. To shake someone awake. To pull someone back from the edge. To reach someone who doesn't even realize how close they are to eternity. It's not just about heaven and hell. It's about Him. About knowing Him. About walking with Him. About living a life that counts. A life that echoes into forever. And if there's breath in your lungs and a beat in your chest, then that opportunity is still in front of you. But I'm telling you, don't wait. I saw what happens when people wait too long. I saw it. I felt it. And I'll never forget it. I can still remember the feeling of being held in that light. It wasn't just warmth. It was acceptance. Not like anything I'd ever felt before. Not like someone giving you a second chance after a mistake or a friend telling you they forgive you. This was deeper. Purity wrapped in grace. It was the kind of love that didn't ignore who I was. It saw who I was and still embraced me fully. It made me realize how little of that kind of love I'd ever allowed into my life. I had built so many walls, even spiritual ones, to keep myself protected. I had convinced myself I didn't need anyone, not really. But in His presence, I saw the truth, how much I needed Him, how much we all do, and how little we actually understand about the love He has for us. And here's something else I can't forget. Jesus didn't just show me where people go. He showed me why they go there. He let me feel the pull that He places on every single person, the constant invitation He sends out to all of us. I felt it. I remember times in my life when I was close, so close to opening that door. The time I nearly gave my heart to Him in my 20s after a funeral. The time I cried alone in my truck after a fight with my dad, feeling something bigger trying to speak to me. The time I stood in the back of church service and almost walked to the altar, but stopped myself because I didn't want to be that guy. All those moments flashed before me like sparks that almost caught fire, but didn't. And Jesus showed me I wasn't the only one. Millions of people carry those same near moments, those same missed chances. And I felt the heartbreak in that. Not from Jesus being angry, but from Him being wounded. I know that's a strange way to put it, but it's the best I can describe it. I felt how deeply it hurts Him when we brush Him off. When we fill our lives with noise and success and pleasure and busyness, and we tell ourselves we'll get right later. He's not begging us because He needs us. He's calling us because we need Him, and because He knows what's coming if we keep saying no. The sorrow in His eyes wasn't about His rejection. It was about ours. He never turned away from us. We turned away from him. And the part that tears me up inside is how easy it is to do. You don't have to be evil. You don't have to curse God. All you have to do is nothing. Just keep drifting, keep delaying, keep living on autopilot, and you'll miss him entirely. If you're hearing this, you still have time. That's the miracle. That's the mercy. If your heart's still beating, then the invitation is still open. You don't have to be a theologian. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to say, yes, Jesus, I want to know you. I want to walk with you. I want to give you my life. That's it. That's where it starts. That's where everything changes. You don't have to clean yourself up first. You come to him, and he does the cleaning. He does the healing. He fills the cracks, breaks the chains, rebuilds what's been lost. And he does it with joy, not obligation. That's what I felt in his presence. Joy. The joy of a father finally seeing his child turn around and run home. The moment I surrendered to that joy, even in that space between life and death, I felt something inside me heal, something I didn't even know was broken. I didn't feel worthy. I didn't feel prepared. But none of that mattered to him. He wasn't waiting for me to get everything right. He wasn't holding a checklist or reciting a list of my failures. He simply wanted me. That realization hit me like a flood. And when I came back into my body, when my eyes opened in that warehouse and the cold air hit my lungs like a shockwave, I didn't bring back just a story. I brought back a calling, a purpose, a fire that has never gone out. When the doctors told me I had technically died, I just nodded. I couldn't explain to them what had really happened. They wouldn't have understood. Most people don't. They see it as a medical anomaly, a freak occurrence, something rare that science doesn't have an answer for. But I knew better. I had been there. I had seen what waits beyond the heartbeat. And I had been given a second chance, not just to live, but to warn, to prepare, to stand in front of every person who will listen and say, it's real. It's all real. And you don't want to wait until it's too late to find out. From that point forward, I couldn't go back to life as it was. Everything had changed. When I looked at my kids, I didn't just see them as children. I saw them as eternal souls entrusted to me for a time. When I kissed my wife on the forehead and thanked God for giving me another day with her, I meant it with a depth I never had before. When I saw strangers walking down the street, I no longer saw them as just part of the crowd. I saw them the way Jesus had shown me, as precious, as seen, as deeply loved but dangerously unaware. It became impossible for me to ignore the spiritual condition of the people around me. I wanted to shout it from every rooftop. Wake up, please. Eternity is closer than you think. And yet, even with that urgency, I also felt peace. Not the kind that makes everything easy, but the kind that anchors you in a storm. I still had bills to pay. I still had responsibilities, challenges, moments of doubt. But I was no longer walking blind. I knew who walked with me. I knew where I was going when my time truly came. And that assurance, it changes you. It makes you live with intentionality. It makes you forgive faster, love harder, and speak braver. I stopped worrying about what people thought of me when I talked about Jesus. I stopped apologizing for my faith because I had seen him. And once you've seen the truth, you can't pretend the lies are harmless anymore. I began to notice something else too, something subtle but powerful. As I shared my story, first with my family, then with friends, and eventually with strangers, I realized that people were hungry. Hungry for truth, for clarity, for something real in a world full of noise and shallow answers. Some of them listened politely, others got emotional, and a few walked away. But no one stayed the same. I think that's what the presence of God does when it's truly encountered. It demands a response. You can't just ignore it. You can't shrug it off. You either open your heart or close it tighter. And the more I spoke, the more I understood that my job wasn't to convince anyone. It was to testify, to tell them what I saw, what I felt, what I knew, and to trust the Holy Spirit to do the rest. Sometimes people ask me, what should I do if I'm not ready? If I'm not sure? And I always tell them the same thing. Start talking to Him, right where you are. No fancy prayers, no scripted words. Just talk to Him like He's real, because He is. Tell Him your doubts. Tell Him your fears. Tell Him the truth about where you're at. He already knows it anyway. There's no point in pretending. What He wants is honesty, a soft heart, a willingness to lean in and listen. I didn't come back with a secret formula or a checklist to follow. I came back with one overwhelming message. Jesus is calling, and time is shorter than you think. You don't have to feel something dramatic for it to be real. You might not get chills. You might not hear a voice. But if you feel a pull in your chest right now, that's Him. That's your soul responding to its Creator. And that whisper that's stirring you feel, don't ignore it. Don't silence it with distraction or logic or fear. Because the most dangerous thing you can do when God calls is wait. That's what I saw over and over in that place. Souls who waited. Souls who said, not yet. Souls who thought they had more time. And the worst part? Most of them weren't trying to reject God. They just postponed Him. They got caught up in life. And life ran out. And here's something else I need to say before we close. This message isn't just for the bad people. It's not just for addicts or criminals or those who've hit rock bottom. It's for all of us. Eternity isn't about being better than someone else. It's about being known by Jesus. I've met people who think they're okay because they're kind, generous, or spiritual. But Jesus didn't say, I'll let in the nicest ones. He said, I never knew you. That line hit me hard when I came back, because I realized how easy it is to be close to church, close to religion, even close to the Bible, without being close to Him. And that's the greatest tragedy of all, to be near the truth your whole life and never actually embrace it. I remember lying in my hospital bed a few days after everything happened, staring out the window as snow began to fall. The world outside looked so normal. Cars driving by, nurses walking past, televisions playing muted daytime shows. And yet, inside me, nothing was normal anymore. I was walking around in a borrowed body, breathing borrowed air, with the full weight of eternity pressed gently against my chest. It felt like a secret I couldn't keep, like I had seen behind the curtain and now had to tell the audience what was really waiting there. It wasn't fear I carried, it was urgency, a kind of holy responsibility to make sure people didn't keep sleepwalking through life. Because the truth is, most of us are just surviving, filling the days with tasks, goals, and distractions, hoping things get better. But we don't realize how close we are to the edge. The day I got home, I sat in my truck in the driveway for almost an hour before I went inside. I stared at the steering wheel, tried to process how I was supposed to just go back to normal. My son's backpack was sitting on the passenger seat, and for some reason, that made me cry harder than anything else. Not because of the bag itself, but because I had almost missed all of it, watching him grow up, hearing his voice, getting another chance to be the father he needed. And for what? A heart too proud to surrender? A life spent chasing things that fade? I realized right there that nothing in this world was worth more than knowing Jesus. Not success, not security, not the illusion of control. And from that moment forward, I decided I would not waste the second chance I'd been given. I started praying like my life depended on it, because it did. And not just for me, but for everyone I knew. For my wife, for my children, for coworkers and strangers, and people I hadn't talked to in years. I made a list. Names. People I hadn't thought about in a long time. People I loved, people I'd resented, even people who had hurt me. Because I had seen what happens when a soul steps out of the body without Jesus. And I didn't want that fate for anyone. I started reaching out, apologizing, forgiving, rebuilding. Not because I had all the answers, but because I knew I didn't have time to waste. Every moment mattered. Every soul mattered. And if there was even a chance that sharing my experience could open someone's eyes, then I was going to share it as many times as I had to. One of the last things Jesus made me feel before I returned was this overwhelming wave of hope. Hope not just for me, but for the world. Despite all the sorrow, despite all the people stuck in regret, there was still a bright, burning hope like a sunrise behind a mountain. I could feel it pulsing through the atmosphere of that spiritual realm. A hope that as long as there was life, there was still a chance. And that's what I carry now. That's why I make these videos, why I speak when it's uncomfortable, why I cry for people I barely know. Because hope didn't die on that cross. It rose. And it's alive. And it's reaching for you. Yes, you. Right now. In this moment. The same Jesus who welcomed me in those 6 minutes is calling your name now, asking if you're ready to come home. I think about that moment constantly. The second I felt my soul slip out of my body and the veil between this world and eternity tore wide open, there was no confusion, no hesitation, just complete awareness. I knew I had died. I knew I was no longer part of the physical world. But what I didn't expect was how clearly everything made sense in that moment. All the questions I had ignored, all the things I brushed off as someday thoughts, they came rushing into view with perfect clarity. What mattered was so obvious. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about reputation. It wasn't even about family in that moment. It was about one thing. Did I belong to Jesus? That was the question, the only question, and nothing else even mattered compared to that. And I'll never forget the weight of that knowing. The realization that I had coasted through my life thinking I had faith, thinking I was spiritual enough, but never really surrendering. I had said the right things, nodded during the right prayers, but my heart had never bowed. Not really. I had kept one foot in and one foot out, close enough to feel religious when I needed to, but distant enough to still call my own shots. But there outside my body, standing in eternal light, I knew how hollow that life had been. I had treated salvation like a backup plan, something I'd get serious about when I was older. And yet there I was, almost out of time. And if Jesus hadn't shown me mercy, if he hadn't pulled me back, I wouldn't be here right now, speaking to you. Coming back didn't mean I was instantly perfect. I still wrestle. I still get overwhelmed. But now I wrestle with purpose. I fight my sin with urgency. I approach life differently. Not from fear, but from gratitude. I know what I've been saved from. I know how thin the line is between here and there. And I know how patient Jesus was with me. That's why I plead with people. Not because I want to scare them, but because I want them to know they are loved. Deeply, completely, eternally loved. But love respects your choice. Love doesn't force itself. It invites. It waits. And then it honors whatever decision you make. And that's why now is so important. Because you're making a decision whether you realize it or not. If you're still with me, if you've listened to this entire story, I believe it's because God is speaking to you right now. Through this video, through my voice, through the pounding in your chest, or the still, small whisper in your heart. That's him. That's the same Jesus who stood with me when I left my body. The same one who showed me the weight of every soul's choice. He's with you now, not to scare you, not to judge you, but to offer you the greatest gift you'll ever receive, himself. This isn't about joining a church or memorizing verses or becoming good. This is about surrender, about saying, I've tried it my way, and it's not working. I need you, Jesus. I want to know you. This moment right now, it could be your turning point. I don't know where you've been. I don't know what you've done. But I know Jesus does, and he's still calling. That's what shook me the most about my experience. He wasn't angry. He wasn't standing there with a list of everything I'd messed up. He wasn't shaking his head in disappointment. He was reaching for me with a love that was so powerful, it undid everything I thought I knew about grace. I had heard about grace in church. I had sung about it in hymns, but I didn't understand it until I was standing in the presence of the one who is grace. I didn't get it until I felt it surround me, cover me, cleanse me, not because I was clean, but because he is. And I want that for you. I want you to know that feeling. I want you to experience that freedom, that peace, that clarity that settles deep in your spirit and whispers, "You're home now." You don't have to be strong anymore. You don't have to hold it all together. You don't have to carry the weight of your mistakes or regrets. You can lay it all down right now, right here. You can cry if you need to. You can pray, even if you've never done it before. Just start where you are. Just be honest. That's all Jesus asks. Not for perfection, not for performance, just for your heart. A real heart. A heart that's tired of running and ready to be found. The truth is, I could have stayed silent about this. I could have kept it all to myself, tucked it away, lived quietly with the memories of those 6 minutes. But if I had done that, I would have been disobedient. And worse, I would have been robbing you of the chance to hear what God gave me to give away. That's the point. This story, this testimony, it's not mine to hoard. It's mine to share. And if even one person out there watches this and decides to turn their heart to Jesus, to open that door before it's too late, then every word I've spoken will have been worth it. Every tear, every uncomfortable moment, every time I had to relive the weight of eternity, it'll all be worth it. Because your soul, it matters that much. So I'm asking you now, not as a preacher or a spiritual authority, but as someone who stood on the edge of forever. Don't wait. Don't let another day go by without knowing where you stand with Jesus. You don't need to be afraid of death when you walk with the one who defeated it. You don't need to fear eternity when you've placed your life in the hands of the one who holds it. And if you're ready, if you feel that tug right now, don't push it away. Don't tell yourself you'll think about it later. Later might not come. All you have is now, and now is enough for Jesus to change everything. So here's what I want you to do. If your heart is pounding, if your spirit is stirring, if you feel that tension between fear and hope, that's your moment. That's your invitation. You don't need to be in a church building. You don't need a pastor standing in front of you. You don't need to clean yourself up or figure it all out first. You just need to respond. Right here, right now. You can talk to him. He's listening. The same Jesus that stood with me in that place between life and death is with you now. Closer than your skin, closer than your breath. And all it takes is honesty. All it takes is a whisper. Jesus, I want you. I need you. Forgive me. Change me. Be my savior. That's it. That's the beginning of everything. It doesn't mean all your problems go away. It doesn't mean your life instantly gets easy, but it means you'll never face another moment alone. It means the weight you've been carrying, the guilt, the fear, the loneliness can finally be lifted. It means your soul, the one that was created to live forever, finally comes home to the one who made it. That's what Jesus offers. Not just a religion, not just forgiveness, himself. And when you have him, you have life. You have purpose. You have peace that death can't touch. I'm living proof of that. I should be gone. I should be a memory. But I'm not. I'm here. And I'm telling you with everything I've got, don't miss this. I've spoken to atheists, agnostics, lifelong believers, and people who've been burned by religion. And I've told them all the same thing. No matter where you are on the spectrum, Jesus isn't scared of your questions. He's not intimidated by your doubts. He already knows them. What he wants is your heart, because when he has your heart, everything else follows. That's what I realized in those 6 minutes. That all the knowledge in the world, all the arguments, all the excuses, they meld away in the presence of truth. And the truth is a person. His name is Jesus. And he's not just someone to believe in. He's someone to follow, someone to know, someone who knows you and still says, come. If you're ready, really ready, then I want to give you this opportunity. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, stop for a second. Close your eyes, open your heart, and talk to him. Just you and him, no one else. He's listening. And if you don't have the words, borrow mine. Jesus, I've been running. I've been trying to do it my way, but I've seen where that leads. I need you. I believe you are who you say you are. I believe you died for me. I believe you rose from the grave. And I believe you're calling me right now. So here I am. I surrender. Save me. Fill me. Change me. I am yours. If you prayed that and meant it, you've just made the most important decision of your life. If you made that decision today, if you said yes to Jesus, then I want to welcome you home. Truly, this is the start of a new life, a new eternity. You've just shifted the course of your soul forever. And I believe heaven is rejoicing right now because you said yes. But don't let it stop here. This moment was never meant to be the end. It's the beginning. Now it's time to walk it out, to grow, to learn his voice, to walk in the light that I saw with my own eyes. And you don't have to do it alone. There are people who will walk with you. You got a whole family in Christ waiting to welcome you, wherever you are in the world. If this video spoke to you, I want to ask you to do something bold. Share it. Don't keep it to yourself. Someone you know, someone on your feed, in your family, in your life, is waiting for this exact message, and you might be the one to bring it to them. Leave a comment and tell us what this meant to you. If you prayed that prayer, write, I said yes to Jesus in the comments. Let's flood this channel with stories of redemption. Let's fill this space with proof that he's still moving, still saving, still calling hearts home. And if you're still unsure, if you're still wrestling, keep watching. Keep seeking. God is not finished with you yet. Make sure you hit subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss more stories like this. This isn't just a channel, it's a movement. We're sharing real encounters, real testimonies, real truth. And if you want to be part of that, you're in the right place. Every video we release is designed to help you know Jesus more, prepare for eternity, and live with purpose. You're not here by accident. There's a reason you clicked. There's a reason you stayed this long. And there's a reason you're still listening. The reason is Jesus. This is Derek Malone. I died on February 17th, 2016. I saw what waits on the other side. And I came back with one message. Jesus is real. Eternity is real. And the soul remains aware after death. Don't waste another second. Say yes while you still have time. Thank you for watching. I love you. God loves you more. See you in the next video, Lord willing.